In today's video, I'm going to be showing you my detailed service call process guide. If you're new to the field tech contracting industry, you're on Field Nation, WorkMarket, CloudWork Pro, or maybe even if you're an experienced tech, it might be interesting to look behind the curtain of another tech's process to get some ideas. I designed this document to try to be generic enough to cover any type of call that you might do. And the other aspect of this is that I designed it so that even if a client doesn't ask for a certain piece of information, if you follow this guide, you will probably gather all the information that you need to get the job done right and to save yourself from making return trips and just all these other aspects outside of the normal scopes of work that you might see that the client gives you, other scenarios that might happen. So this is 11 pages of information. This is going to be a longer video, so grab a cup of coffee, get some comfy clothes on, get a notepad. Let's get into it. If you don't know me, I'm Michael. I own Field Tech Academy. I also own my own local brick and mortar business, as well as doing IT field contracting myself, and I have employees. I'm taking all these little things that I teach my employee technicians and sharing them with you so that hopefully it will help you to be more efficient out in the field. Once you've been assigned a ticket, the first thing you want to do is identify who your actual client is. And that's typically labeled as a buyer on these marketplaces and platforms like Field Nation and WorkMarket. So your actual client isn't Field Nation or WorkMarket, it is the buyer that placed the ticket on that marketplace. When you're prepping for your ticket, you want to, check the ticket to make sure that you have the supplies and the tools that you're going to need to complete the job. It's almost every ticket, whether it's a platform-based ticket or a direct client, is going to have a work order that's going to state you need to have this cable, you need to have this type of cable, you need to have these supplies. They're going to tell you what the job is to do, and by that, you need to extrapolate what supplies you're going to need. And that's very important. So you want to make sure that you either go buy the things locally or that you order on Amazon or whatever, and that you have everything you need before you go to the site. And of course, before you go out, you want to understand the scope of work. What is the job saying that you're going to do? And if there's ever a question, you can always pick up the phone, call the client, and ask them for more clarification, or you can send them a message on WorkMarket and Field Nation. You want to make sure you understand what paperwork's required, what photos are needed for the job. All of that should be explained on the ticket. Again, if you don't know, call your buyer, send them a message, and ask. They want you to be able to do the job efficiently. They want it done right. They're going to be able to answer that question for you. The next thing is parts, and I'm not talking about supplies. I'm talking about, like routers and switches, big things that are going to be installed at the site and left there. In most cases, the parts are just going to be shipped to the location. It's very rare that they're going to ship it to you as the technician, but it does happen. So you will want to make sure that you have the ability to receive shipments when necessary. Most clients are going to call you ahead of time to kind of give you a heads up that things are shipping out. If they're going to ship them to you, they're going to verify your shipping address. If you are going to be receiving parts for clients and you're working out of your house, you're just an individual, then you probably want to make sure that you get a UPS box or something, because some of these things require signatures. So if there's not someone at home all the time, because you're hopefully out in the field doing service calls, making money, then you need to have a place where those parts can be delivered. So maybe if you have a friend that has a business, or again, UPS box is probably the easiest way. And that's what I tell people to do, because you can rent like the smallest box at a UPS store, and it's really not much, per month. And if you pay annually, then you get a discount. But even if you have a small box, they will still allow you to receive large shipments, and they'll just put them, back behind the counter until you come pick them up. So it doesn't have to fit in the box that you rent. The other thing you want to do is look for any tracking numbers that are in the ticket. If it's an email-based work order, you want to look and see if in the email there's any tracking information. And you want to verify that the parts have been delivered before you go to the site, because clients won't pay you if you drive out to the site and the parts were delayed or not delivered, so you're wasting your time. So you want to verify parts are on site before you do anything. One thing I've noticed about WorkMarket tickets is it always says by default that parts are being shipped to you. And I don't know why they haven't changed this wording, But for whatever reason, it always says that. So you can't rely on that default. You need to look at the messages section of WorkMarket, or again, call the buyer if you need to verify. When you're on the call or going to the call and you have expenses like parking or tolls, or you use any of your parts or supplies, you need to keep track of it throughout that service call so that you can notate it on the ticket and request reimbursement for those items. It's critical that you tell the client about all your expenses when you're calling in to close the ticket, because later on, if you try to add it as an expense or you try to send them an invoice with extra expenses on it and you didn't tell them about it, you're going to have a hard time getting that approved. So be sure to keep track of it and tell your client about it before you leave the site. If you're on a platform like Field Nation, WorkMarket, CloudWork Pro, I mean, all the different marketplaces, you'll have to add an expense item into the ticket and request additional money as you're doing the closeout process. So be sure to do that so that you will get paid back for it. Now, you also want to include a markup to cover any platform fees, and every platform has different fees, so you want to calculate that in. For example, let's use Field Nation. They're a 10% fee, not counting the insurance side. We're just talking about normal 10% fee. If you wanted to make 20% profit off of your parts and supplies, which there's nothing wrong with that, any business marks up parts, then you got to include the 10% fee for Field Nation plus your 20% markup, so that's a total of 30% markup. Now, to calculate that, it's not a multiplication, it's a division. You take the cost of the item and divide it by 0.7, which is 0.7 because you're doing 30%. So it's 100 minus 30 leaves 70. So you're taking the cost of the item divided by 0.7, and that gives you the cost of the item with the 30% markup built in. And that's what you want to charge when the marketplace charges a 10% fee and you want to make 20% profit off of the parts and supplies. Now, if it's just parking or tolls, you're not going to do a markup on that, but you do want to recover that 10% Field Nation fee. So in that case, you would just take the cost of the parking or the tolls and divide it by 0.9, because 100 minus 90 is 10, so 0.1 would give you the cost of the item plus the 10% markup. If you multiply it, I know this sounds funny, but if you take the cost of the item and you do times 0.1 and add that in, it's not quite a 10% markup. And so you'll actually be losing a slight amount of money. Gotta love math. Direct clients that require invoices will need the parts itemized with one line for each item, and you need to show the quantity and a description of the item and the per item cost. So those of you who have direct clients that actually require you to send the invoice by email, this is something very important. Most Field Nation clients are going to want you to itemize as well. Direct clients that use their own website for billing should have a place to add additional expenses, or they're going to already show them when you go into that website because you called them over the phone, like you should have, and you told them about it over the phone. So it should already be there. And then if obviously anything's missing, you want to call them and get that all resolved before you close out the ticket on their website. Something that I do dealing with boxes of cable. So, you're going to be carrying around 1,000-foot boxes of cable. You're going to use them until they get down to like 100 feet. Something that we found as a company is that when that box gets to 100 feet or less, it's pretty much useless because a lot of times you don't know exactly how far a cable run is. So you got this box sitting there that has 100 feet in it, and you're like, well, maybe this will reach, maybe it won't. And so you may not use that box and it just sits there and takes up space in your van, or you may try to use it and then end up coming up short. And I have not yet found a cable stretcher that works. So what I do instead is when I'm on a job using cable, when that box gets to 100 feet or less, then I just bill that client from that job for that last 100 feet and I throw the box away. Another thing that you want to do is when you are using boxes of cable and you get done with that particular job and you're going to throw the box back in the van, look at that cable and look at the feet markers on it and write on the outside of the box with a Sharpie how many feet are left in that box. Makes your life so much more simpler because you can look in your work van and you can see, okay, that box has 500 feet, that box has 200 feet, etc. When it comes to finding sites, you want to look on the client app or their website and look for suite numbers or floor numbers so that you can locate the sites. Now, of course, I'm assuming you've found the address. A lot of rural addresses may not show up properly in mapping. And sometimes you'll have areas that are new build outs that weren't previously addressed. and those may not show up. So if you're using your normal default Android Google Maps or your Apple phone maps and you don't see the address, something as an alternative, you want to download MapQuest. And then there's times that I found that the maps just take you to a wrong address. So a funny little thing that happened to me recently was I was in a small town and I mapped this ahead of time, and I already knew based on the map, I was like, this is not the right address, but I couldn't get any information from the client. So I just drove out to where it sent me, at least as far as I could tell. And then I went to the post office thinking, okay, the post office knows addresses, and they didn't know where it was. And they said, oh, you need to go to the water department. I'm like, water department? Yeah, because when places are getting built, they have to get with the water department to get service. So I drove over to the water department, and sure enough, the nice lady behind the counter pulled up the address, and she goes, oh yeah, it's down the road, turn left at the water tower kind of thing. And it got me there. But anyway, so assuming that you found the actual location and you've got a suite number or a floor number, if you don't already know this, again, I know I'm speaking to experienced techs, but I'm also speaking to new techs. So if it's a multi-story building, commercial high-rise building, and you get a suite number that's like 1502, that probably means it's on the 15th floor. So keep that in mind. And if you're in a shopping center and you get something that says, suite number 2301, then you may have the address, and then each individual little building in that shopping center is going to have a different suite number on it. And they're all the same address, but they've got different suite numbers. Now, let's assume you've got to the site. This is what I like to do before I even leave the vehicle, because you want to get these things done, because there's a lot of things that can cause delays after the fact. So before you ever get out of your car, you want to check in with the client. Basically, I'm saying you want to get on the clock. So first thing you do when you park, before you leave your car, check in with the client. So checking in can be using the little check-in box like on Field Nation or WorkMarket. Your client may have an app. Direct clients have some websites. Of course, other options are to physically call the client on the phone, because even though Field Nation has that option for check-in, that buyer may want you to actually call on the phone and check in. That gets you on the clock. So if it's an hourly job, your time has started. The reason that's important is because if you go, you walk up to the building and the door's locked because it's before hours, and you spend all this time trying to get into the building and knocking on doors, and or you go to the front and the manager is in a meeting or something and they won't let you work until you talk to the manager, and there's all these time delays. I mean, even if it's 15 minutes, you want to be on the clock. You're there to do the work. It's not your fault that you're having a delayed start. So you want your time to be running. So check in from your vehicle. I would say, though, that you want to arrive about 10 minutes early or 15 minutes early, but you really don't want to actually check into the job site until you're about 10-15 minutes out from the start time, because clients don't really want to pay you for extra time. And if you're showing up too early, then they may not be ready for the site to go. Obviously, if you have permission from the client and they're okay with it, then you're good. So if the job is scheduled to start before the business opens, it kind of makes things a little more complicated. You should assume that a manager has been notified about it and that they're going to be there, or somebody's going to be there. Check the back doors, especially at restaurants. A lot of times, you'll go before the restaurant is open, so you're not going to be able to get in through the front door, but there's a lot of activity that happens before they open, so you can go to the back door because they're going to be receiving shipments. The cooks are going to be there already cooking, so there should be a buzzer back there, or you can knock. Sometimes you can go just knock on the front door. If it's glass, you can take your keys and just tap on the glass. And it's amazing how loud that is. I mean, don't hit it hard. Let's not break glass. But, you tap, tap, tap with a key on glass. It's pretty loud. So if somebody's in the building, then that's going to get their attention. The other thing you can do is look around the parking lot. And if it's a pretty isolated place and there's no cars in the parking lot at all, you can assume that probably nobody's there. If you made every effort to make contact and to get inside and you're not getting any kind of response, then you want to call the client and you want to let them know immediately nobody's here, and let them go through their process, because they may have escalation points. They may be able to call on the phone and talk to general managers or regional managers, and somebody might be able to go down the chain and find somebody to get there. The bottom line is, again, if you checked in from your car, then this whole time you're on the clock, letting them deal with their process, because that person should have been there. And then you can rely on them to decide, okay, we're going to wait for 30 minutes, we're going to wait for 45 minutes or whatever, or they're on their way, and they'll let you know whether you can leave site and call it a failure, or you can stay on site, stay on clock until they get there. All clients track metrics, so that affects your ratings. You want to be sure that you are on time. It's a critical part of this whole industry is being on time. And they're going to keep track of you. They're going to know, okay, this guy is consistently late, and it's going to hurt your ability to get jobs. So being on time is critical. If you call to check in and you're on hold for a long period of time, you want to make sure that whenever they finally pick up, that you get them to backdate your check-in time to match when their call started. So keep track of that as well. Let's assume everybody's there. You can go into the site. This is what I teach people when you enter a site. So if a specific point of contact is listed on the ticket, you want to ask for that person. If no specific contact is listed, tell whoever meets you at the door that you're a technician there to perform the task that's in the work order and ask for the manager on duty. Now, does it have to be a manager? Not necessarily, as long as the staff will let you do the work. It doesn't really matter, but you want to start out with at least asking for a manager. When you finally get in front of the manager or the person that's going to authorize your work, just introduce yourself to them and explain to them why you're there, what you're there to work on. I wouldn't even bother giving them a company name unless they specifically ask for it. If the ticket is through a platform or a marketplace, look for the buyer name like I discussed earlier. Typically, the site's not going to recognize Field Nation or WorkMarket. They're only going to recognize maybe the buyer name. Sometimes they don't even recognize that. Keep your explanation of your visit very simple, very generic. These people typically aren't very technical, so don't get into a long explanation. I'm here to install some new network equipment. I wouldn't even say router or switch. I would just say network equipment, or I'm here to fix your internet, depending on whether it's an install or a repair. A lot of times, if something's broken, they know it's broken. They're just glad to see you. If it's a new install, hopefully corporate let them know that you were coming out to do some sort of install. So you don't need to get into a lot of detail with that person. You just need to give them enough information so they'll go, oh yeah, I know what that's about. I got a box in the back, and they send you to the right spot in the building to start your work. Proof of insurance. All right, some sites, like some malls, if the mall figures out that you're there working at Journeys or, Route 21 or whatever, the mall might want you to provide a certificate of insurance, or, sometimes other smaller businesses will do the same thing. Now, if you're just an individual, you may not already have insurance. In theory, your client will have general liability insurance. So if the site will not let you start work until they get a copy of the insurance, then you need to call the client. You need to say, hey, I need to get a copy of your COI, your certificate of insurance. I need it sent over to this person, and obviously ask the person, what's your email address so we can send the certificate, and then let the client know that you can't start work. Let them deal with all the administrative side, and you just hang out and figure out how long the process is going to take, if they need to reschedule, or if they just want you to wait while they take care of it. Next, we want to look at locating the equipment and the correct place to work in the building. You want to ask the manager to take you to the area where the equipment needs to be installed or repaired. Where's the network rack? Where's the pen pad that's down that we're swapping? Where's the phone that's broken? You want to verify the location matches what's in your work order. If they take you to some place and the work order says that it should be somewhere else or a different device, if it's supposed to be pin pad 3 and they take you over to register 5, then something's not jiving, because typically pin pad 3 is going to be on register 3. So just make sure that matches. Ask the manager to provide you any parts that were shipped to site, if applicable. Ask the manager to describe the problem they're having so you understand the situation. So even though your work order says something, and even though they know something's broken, ask them what's going on so that you can be sure that what you're working on and the task and what you're trying to accomplish matches up with what issue they're having. If the job is to do a new install, not a repair, ask the manager if there's anything technical at the site that's broken, not working as of that moment. This protects you so that you're not blamed for a pre-existing problem. Once you get your boxes, unbox everything and check the items against the work order or packing list or your install guide. You want to make sure that you detect whether something's missing or not right up front. The reason I say that is because recently I did a service call where my work order said that I was installing 4 speakers. The floor plan that was attached to it laid out 4 speakers. Everything about the ticket said 4 speakers. So I get out there, I unbox the amplifier, I unboxed the media player, I opened up one of the 2 speaker boxes, and I started going to work. I pulled cable for 4 speakers, I spaced out the speakers in the ceiling for 4 speakers, started installing speakers, got 2 of them installed, because there's 2 in one box. I go to the last box, which should have 2 speakers in it, and of course, there's 1 speaker in it. Come to find out, they changed it to a 3-speaker install. Well, I didn't get paid for all of that time because I didn't check the parts. I didn't open the boxes. I had ran cables for 4 speakers, so I had to redo the speaker wiring, and I did all that on my time because I didn't follow my own rules. I didn't open every single box and verify. So take that as a lesson. Always open all the boxes, verify that you have what you think you should have. And if you don't, if you're missing something, then of course, call the client right then and say, hey, everything on the ticket says 4 speakers, but I only have 3 speakers. Let them figure out what the deal is, and you just hang out until they tell you what to do. All right, so now we've got everything. We've got our boxes. We've got our spot. We're in the building. Now we need to start working. So you want to look for any technical support contacts on the ticket that you're required to contact before beginning work. And this is very typical. They want you to call them ahead of time before you start doing things because they don't want you to just start disconnecting things. They want things done in a certain way. And, many times they're going to want to remotely turn the equipment off or take it offline, things like that. Look for any conference bridge information. So you may have to get on a conference bridge and, there'll be 5, 6, 10 people on there. They may be working multiple sites around the country all at the same time. They may want you to be actively on that bridge during the call. So you need to get into that so that they know that you're there. Otherwise, you may get phone calls going, hey, where are you at? Why aren't you on the bridge? And that could cause issues with disputes on pay because they're like, well, you said you were at site, but you didn't get on the bridge for an hour. They're going to wonder why that additional time is there when you weren't connected to the bridge. If there's any install guides in your email from your client or attached to the marketplace ticket, you want to refer to those to make sure you kind of understand what needs to be installed. And a lot of times they're going to walk you through step by step and give you pictures of the items. A lot of projects are very clearly defined because they've done them a million times or they have a nationwide rollout. So it's going to be the same for every site, realistically. As always, if you ever have questions about the scope of work, procedural questions, deliverables questions, call the client. They're going to answer your question. They want you to do it right. If you have a tech support question, then there probably is going to be a separate tech support group, and it may be the same group, but you just need to distinguish, okay, if it's procedural, I probably need to talk to the client. If it's technical, I'm looking for a tech support contact. You just want to try to differentiate those. Next thing, and this is of course important for pay, is your deliverables. So first of all, what is a deliverable? So a deliverable is any item required by the client for closure and billing. It could be a work order, it could be a specific document, it could be a photo, screenshots, files, reports, answers to questions in custom fields, etc. It's basically anything the client requires for you to provide for them to release the ticket for payment and consider the job closed. You want to read through your work order very carefully or look on the website ticket and make sure that you understand what is needed. And guess what I'm going to say next? If you don't know for sure and you're not confident, call the client and ask them. Read the client documentation, look at their website, or look at their app to determine what deliverables are needed so you can capture them during the call process. You especially want to do this up front because there may be some items that are before items. So you want to look for anything that says before because it's really hard to take a picture of a before item when you've swapped out devices and done the work and you're like, oh, crud. You either have to put it back or hope the client will say, it's okay, you don't need it. But better to try to get it up front than to worry about the back end. The other thing I do is I would keep a copy of all the deliverables on your device or cloud storage until you get paid so that if they go out a week from now and they call you and they go, hey, that site, we didn't get blah, blah, blah picture, or, you didn't fill out this work order or whatever. If you've got all that saved in the cloud or on your device, then you can immediately turn around and email it to them or upload it to the website or whatever. You got quick access to it and you have it. Obviously, if you dump stuff off your phone, you delete it too quickly, then you're going to have issues because then you're going to have to drive all the way back out to take a photo. At least keep all these things on your devices or on your cloud storage until you're paid. And heck, I keep them longer than that just to be safe. Next, scope of work. So make sure you read the scope of work. go through it to figure out what tasks and what things are required. Every client's going to require different documentation, different information, different photos. You also want to make sure that you're not working on equipment or tasks not defined in the scope of work. You want to complete all the service tasks before you leave the site. Like on Field Nation and WorkMarket, even some direct client apps, there's going to be these line items, and they're either things you have to mark with a checkbox, or when you touch it, it's going to take you to an upload. You just want to make sure you go through all of those items while you're still on the clock and still on the site to, number one, make sure you get everything. And then number two, make sure that it's uploaded and complete and ready to bill. On many jobs, you're going to be required to label cables, patch panels, wall plates, etc. Clients don't like handwritten things. They don't want you doing handwritten labels. They don't want you handwriting on wall plates. They don't like that. So you need to have a label maker, and you need to print out your labels, put everything on, and put them on straight. I've had clients make me pull the labels off and redo them because they weren't just straight enough. You want to complete all the paperwork and the photo documentation and upload or email them to your client, depending on how they require them. But you should not do any extra or additional work without the express permission of the client, not the site. The site contact, the manager, the end user, they are not the ones that make the decisions on the scope of work. The client is who you answer to. The client is who pays you. So if the site asks you to do something outside of the work scope, you should get your client approval before you complete it. Because it may be a piece of equipment that your client doesn't support. They may have a contract with one company to do their IT stuff, and they may have a different contract to do their phone stuff. If you want to get paid for the time you put into that, then you want to make sure it's in your scope and your client's okay with it. The other thing too is if you work on something that's out of scope and you break it or brick it or whatever, then you're going to be responsible to put it back together, and you may not get paid for that. So be careful. If the client does ask you to do additional work, or they approve additional work that's not in the original scope, and it would make you late to your next job, that kind of becomes a delicate situation, because most clients are going to want you to stay and fix it, especially if a site is down. They want to do whatever it takes to get them to be back online. So even if it's not in the original scope, they don't care. They're going to want you to do whatever it takes. So in that case, they're not going to be real excited about the idea of you leaving because you have another job. And that gets difficult because then your next client is going to be upset because you're late. So when a site is down, it's a little different situations. But if they just need an extra cable ran for convenience, or it's something that's not mission critical, then hopefully if it would make you late to your next job, then that current client will understand that you need to reschedule and do a follow-up trip. But that's, again, something you need to get on the phone and discuss with that client to make sure everybody's on the same page. Most platforms and clients are going to list a pre-approved amount of time for the job. So Field Nation, WorkMarket, even direct clients are going to have a spot that says, $65 an hour for 6 hours. And then if you go beyond that time, most clients will pay you, but there needs to be a lot of things that happen for that to work properly. So if you find that you're about to go over the pre-approved amount of time, you need to contact the client and you need to get approval before you keep going. If it's 15 minutes, that's not a big deal. But if it, let's say that the job was pre-approved for 6 hours and you didn't say anything, you didn't talk to the client, and you were there for 9 hours, and all of a sudden you try to close and bill that, they're going to ask a lot of questions and they're likely to deny it. We didn't know you stayed for 9 hours or whatever the deal is. So once you're approaching that pre-approved amount of time, if you're actively talking to tech support, then obviously they're going to know. But if it's a cabling job and it's not something where you're talking to them constantly, then as soon as there's delays or anything that would push you outside of that approved amount of time, you need to get on the phone and say, hey, we're approaching that 6 hour mark, but I ran into a problem with whatever, I had to extend the cable, and there was a cement wall that I had to drill through, and it took forever to get through the cement wall. There are obviously logical reasons for something going over time, but the bottom line is communication, because if you don't communicate with them and you just hit them with 3 extra hours, they're going to be very likely to decline it, because they're like, well, we don't know why you were there. Like I've said, this whole thing, you got to get on the phone, you got to talk to people. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I've had employees that do these things, and it drives me nuts. They will not pick up the phone, and they will not talk to people. They will not call. They will just push through blindly, doing the work, which is great. They're getting the job done, but they're not talking to anybody. So then when I go through to do all the billing, I get to do this whole dance with people on why was your tech there for so long? He didn't check in with us. He didn't tell us what was going on. So save yourself some hassle. Talk to them along the way. Trash is a fun one. You need to manage your trash during the entire call process. Sites don't like it when you spread everything out, all your boxes and packing material and parts and all this stuff, and you take up a lot of space, especially retail. You're taking up all this floor space and creating trip hazards and all this stuff. They don't like that, and they're going to report you to the client. When you're unboxing everything, take the big boxes, empty them out, get all your parts out, and then take all the small boxes and throw them in the big box. Throw all the packing material in the big box, or just break all the boxes down flat. Try to compress and keep everything in a very tight space. It'll make your clients much happier. And by having everything out of the boxes, you'll be able to see it. It's like I've got my switch here with my power supply on it or power cord. I've got all these devices. I've got them organized. I know what I have. I know where it is. And I've gone through the boxes. I know there's no spare screws. I know there's no mounting brackets. I know that there's no whatever. I've looked under every piece, so I know that nothing is in those boxes. And then I would hang on to them long enough till you get everything installed so that you know you didn't miss something. Dumpster diving is not a sport you want to get into. We've all done it, I'm sure, but you just want to be sure there's nothing left in those boxes before you do throw them in the dumpster. Now we're going to assume that the job is done and we're wanting to get it closed out and get paid. So obviously, finish the work, perform testing with tech support, verify everything is done and done the way the client wants it done. Document any close codes or release numbers from your tech support people. So you may be on the phone with tech support and they say everything's good. They're going to say, here's your close code. And then you're going to call your client later and close the ticket, but they'll want that close code from the tech support group or a person's name. So write down the name of any person you speak to on the phone to check in, to get support, to check out. You might be contracted with a particular client, but that client is not the actual tech support company. They're just a middleman. You're actually talking to an Ulta store's Ulta employee tech support. So your client isn't going to have direct contact with that Ulta group. They are going to have to get the information from you so that when they do their billing, then they know, okay, this guy with Ulta Tech Support released the tech and said he was good. A lot of these tickets are subcontracted, several layers deep. So you want to make sure you keep track of who you're talking to, what their names are, and who they work for. If the person that you got support from is the person that actually checks you out of the site, it's one and the same, then, you get all done with the job, then they're going to be like, okay, well, we're going to check you out at blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whoa, I haven't done my deliverables or I haven't cleaned up the site. So you want to make sure that they don't just check you out as soon as everything's fixed. And most clients are understanding of this. There's several things you want to get done before you actually get closed out of the site. You want to stay on the clock until you get done with all of the tasks, all the deliverables. And we're going to talk about that. What I do is if they're getting ready to, release me from site, I say, hey, I need some time to clean up. And so that's kind of the code word that everybody uses is time to clean up the site before they actually check you out. We're going to use that time to do all of our deliverables. Clients require deliverables to close the ticket and pay you. So since they require them, then you need to stay checked in and stay on the clock, billable time to do all these things until you get them done. Now, obviously, if you abuse that, there's going to be a problem. I mean, if you take 45 minutes to upload 3 photos and make half a paragraph of notes, it's going to raise red flags. So be honest, but at the same time, stay on the clock and go through, like if it's the Phil Nation tickets and there's 20 tasks, do all those tasks, upload all the photos, add all your notes, do all of those things on the clock because they require it. You should be paid while you're doing it. I fought this battle for years with my technicians and I get it. You get done with the job, the task, it's working. You got another job, you want to book. You want to get out, you want to get to the next job, but it is absolutely critical that these deliverables get done, or what's going to happen is you're going to end up at the end of the day or some other day down the road taking time off the clock, off of the client's clock to go through the process of doing all these deliverables, or whoever does the billing for your company is going to try to bill the ticket and have to chase you down for these deliverables. Therefore, your company is spending time to pay a person to track all this stuff down when you should have done it while you were at the site, still on the client's clock, so that your company or you are getting paid to take the time to get all this stuff done. You don't want to wait until the evening and be checked out of a job and then go home at night and spend 2 hours closing all your tickets for the day. That time should have been paid. So that's my personal philosophy. Hopefully that helps you. So to make all this work better, make detailed notes throughout this call process. Like we were talking about, keep track of people's names, who checked you in, who checked you out. Document any delays. Don't wait until the very end to talk to your client about delays. Make notes about what's happening, or call them and be like, hey, I can't run a cable in this particular area because they're doing a grand opening thing for the next 20 minutes, or whatever's happening. There's something that's stopping you from doing your work. You need to let your client know so they understand, okay, well, so when he adds an extra hour, it's because earlier in the job, a water main broke. You know what I mean? Stuff happens. Tidy up all your cabling before you take photos. And again, don't spend 2 hours doing it. But if there's a few things you can do to clean up and make things look better when you're taking your deliverable photos, then the clients are going to be happy about that. If you send a picture in, even though it wasn't your fault and it was that way when you got there, but if you send in pictures and things look horrific, then they're going to want you to do it anyway, or they're going to be unhappy that you didn't do it. Take any photos that are required by the client. What I do is I photograph any serial numbers and MAC addresses of any devices that I work on. So when I'm taking it out of the box and I'm about to install it, I flip it over and I take a picture of that label before it goes in the rack. And I do it before it goes in the rack because once it gets in the rack, a lot of times you can't see the label. So that's something really important to do. And inevitably, they're going to ask for it after everything's installed and tidy and great. And then they're going to be like, do you have the MAC address for that device? And you'll be like, I will in a minute. So if you do it before you put it in the rack, that's great. And then anything that you pull out of service, then you want to take pictures of that label as well, just in case there's any confusion. It's never a bad thing to have extra photos. I take pictures of every piece of equipment that I interact with, and I take a wide shot photo of the entire area around where I worked so that they can see perspective on where, if it's an AP, I take a back shot so it shows, okay, well, there's the AP and it's at the front of the store clearly because there's registers in the view, or they can see, where it's oriented. They want to see cable management. They want to see placement. If you run a new cable, you should always take a picture of your tester screen showing the cable passed. And the other thing I do is when I take the picture of the cable tester, I try to orient it so that the label of the wall plate or the label of the patch panel is in the same shot, so that there's no dispute that this port passed, this cable passed, etc., that it's not just a stock photo that I pulled from a previous job. You should have photos for every job almost without exception. I mean, there's some data centers where obviously they're not going to allow you to take pictures, but with those exceptions in mind, everything else, you should have multiple pictures. And I always take extra photos of anything that I'm around. Like I said earlier, anything I interact with, the area around it. Because again, you may get off site and a week later, before they release ticket for payment, then they're going to be like, hey, you don't happen to have a picture of blah, blah, blah. So having too many pictures is impossible. I say that and then we'll get a guy that has 100 pictures, but you get the idea. All right, when you're done, everything's repaired, then notify the manager, site contact, whoever it is that you're done, and have them sign your work order. Get the name and signature of an adult that's over 18. Doesn't necessarily have to be the manager if the manager's not available. As long as somebody's willing to sign your work order and they saw you working, totally fine. If the job was unsuccessful, some of the managers, some of the site people are going to be hesitant to sign your work order. The way I approach it is that I will write in the notes where they can see it. Job is incomplete, job unsuccessful, needs a return visit, parts shipped were bad. So you let them know, and you approach it from the concept of your signature isn't saying that the site is up and running. Your signature is just validating that I was here and that my time on site, my time off site are right, and that these notes are right. And by doing it that way, a lot of times you can get those that are hesitant to actually sign the work order. I've had situations where techs will try to get a signature and the manager's off site, and they'll, for some reason, not have somebody else sign it, or they'll forget to get it signed and they'll leave the site. They'll try to email the work order to a manager and have them sign it and send it back. Managers are people, they'll make promises and they're well intentioned, but they're not going to do it. I mean, maybe 1 out of 100, but realistically, if you forget a signature, you're going to have to drive back and get it physically. It's not going to work any other way most of the time, but make sure you get it before you leave so that you have to deal with that. If the client has an app or a website that allows uploads from your camera, you always want to take the photos with your camera first and put them in your gallery instead of just using the little option to take from camera. Because if you do that option, you say, upload from camera, it's going to take a picture to upload to them. But if you go look at your gallery, that photo's not going to be there. So again, a week later, whatever, they're like, well, we didn't get this picture. You're like, well, I uploaded it in the app. They're like, well, we don't have it. Guess who gets to deal with it? You do, because it doesn't matter if you took it. It doesn't matter what you think. If they don't have it, they don't have it. Or if they don't think they have it, they don't have it. So you always want to take the picture with your camera first before you do it in the app so that it is in your gallery, and then in the app, select the gallery option and upload it from your device. If a client asks you to email something directly to them, keep in mind, email in today's world is still capped at like 20 megabytes. So max you're going to get is 3 to 5 high resolution photos. So you're either going to have to use a picture resizer software, which, there's lots of apps that will resize your photos, or you're going to have to send multiple emails with only 3 to 5 pictures in each one, which can be a big pain in the butt. Something that I do is I have a cloud drive set up. I've got Google Drive, and I upload all my deliverables. I go in and I create a folder that says, Field Nation and a ticket number. And then I go into that folder and I upload everything, the work order, if I have a signed work order, any documents, all my deliverables into that folder, and I leave it there for a period of time, just in case, again, you're trying to save yourself hassle down the road. And by making a folder for it and naming it, then you can search for it, you can find it, and then that way, if something happens, you can just go to that folder and re-upload it or resend it. In most cases, you're going to use digital paperwork, or you're going to use an app. Like Field Nation has a signature box that you can do digitally on your phone or a tablet. Sometimes you'll even have a PDF document that you download, and you can fill it all out digitally on a tablet or on your phone. There are some rare cases where you're actually going to have to print out physical paperwork. In that case, you want to be sure that you scan it using whatever cloud program you use. I know Google Drive and Dropbox have an option where you can just scan, and then you take your camera phone and you just hover over it and it converts it to a PDF. Some of the upload software will have limitations, and sometimes it'll only accept document styles, and sometimes it'll only accept image styles. And so they may say, we want the work order uploaded, but it will only take a photo. So instead of scanning it, you're going to want to take a photo of the work order, or take a screenshot if you have it on a tablet or something, because it may not actually let you upload the PDF version of it, even though it was a PDF to start with. Now, before you leave the site, you want to do all these things before you call to checkout or clicking the checkout button on the app, platform, etc. Like I talked about before, you must stay on the clock until everything's done. Clean up the site, throw away all your trash, load up your tools and equipment, get everything in the van, get ready to go. Make sure you haven't left anything behind. You don't want that extra cost of losing expensive tools, and then that just cuts into your profit. Itemize all the supplies that you used on the job in the client's closeout notes, or have it ready so that when you call them, you have everything ready to tell them. If they have a website or app, look for their notes section or what have you. You want to document how many feet of cable did you use? What kind of cable was it? Was it Cat 5, Cat 6? Was it plenum, non-plenum? Speaker cable, coax, whatever you used. You want to notate how many wall plates did you use? How many keystones did you use? How many, etc., etc., etc. You need to have everything defined before you call them to close out. You want to fill out all the paperwork. You want to fill out any spreadsheets, any work orders, all the deliverable stuff. You want to get all the photos done. And your work order, you want to have it like completely filled out. The only thing that should be missing is the clock out time. So you want to have your manager sign it. You want to have it fully complete, open and ready to put that time off site. Get everything uploaded. Read the client documentation again, like we talked about earlier. Read the website, read the app, figure out what deliverables are needed, get everything uploaded, complete all the tasks if they have little task checkboxes, complete all the custom fields. This is one that I see the most missed, is when I go to actually submit the ticket for payment that one of my techs did. I'll hit the submit button and it'll say, well, you didn't answer these custom questions. And for whatever reason, it is the most overlooked thing. So, because you'll have these custom tasks, line items, and the techs will usually see those and they'll check mark all those and get those done. But then further down, there'll be like this little thing that says custom fields, and there's a little edit pin there. And there'll be 2 or 3 things that they were supposed to answer. And so I can't close the ticket. I got to go text them, call them, chase them down and figure out, hey, what was the answer to this question? So you want to look for those and get that done before you call the closeout. Go ahead and enter your closeout notes in the client app, website, or write them down on your PDF. Now, one thing I've noticed is WorkMarket does not actually have a closeout notes box like FieldNation does. So with WorkMarket, what I do is I go into the messages section and I put all of my closeout notes in the messages section and save it so that when I'm ready to close, all I gotta do is copy and paste them, because then on WorkMarket, when you go to close the ticket, all of a sudden your closeout notes box pops up. But you can't bring that box up until you're actually in the process of closing the ticket. And if you don't actually close the ticket, then the notes go away. So you want to find something that's more permanent, like the messages, so that they're saved and you don't lose them in case you don't close that ticket for payment right at that moment. Now, when it comes time for getting released from the site, we're going to look at 2 or 3 different types here. First of all, we're going to look at the email clients. So these are typically direct clients. A lot of those are going to be email based, and you're going to have to call them and start the closeout process. You're going to have to notify them, again, what supplies did you use, and let them know so that when you bill for them on the back end, they know what's been used. Most of the time, they're not going to ask for the pricing in that moment. They just want to know what is it and how many of them did you use, and then you can make the pricing on your invoice later. You want to ask the rep that you're talking to look and verify, did you get all the closeout things that you need, all the deliverables? Is there anything missing? Because you want to get it done then and there. If they give you a release code, you want to write that down on the work order before you upload it, or put it in the notes or something so you've got it captured. Now, if it's like an app or a marketplace website-based client, even though you call them to close out, you still have to go back to the website and actually hit the checkout button, and you may have to submit it for payment, things like that. And you want to try to make sure that the checkout time for that website matches the time you checked out with the client on the phone. When it comes to a 2-man job, there's some different wrinkles you want to realize. So if for some reason the client authorized you to have 2 techs billing out at an hourly rate, and it's all under the same ticket, then you need to remember that FieldNation the system will not allow you to put in overlapping times. So you can't put in Tech 1 as 8 to 12 and Tech 2 as 8 to 12 on the same date. So you may have to play some games. You may have to put in one with the current date and put in the second tech with a different date, either day before or date after, because it has to be completely non-overlapping times. Sometimes the clients will give you 2 separate tickets to pay the 2 separate techs. So you may have a lead tech, you may have a helper tech ticket, but you're still going to have to go into each ticket and fill out all the deliverables and everything for both tickets separately. If you just put everything under one ticket, then when it gets to the admin people and they try to close it out, they're going to be like, well, hey, where are all your photos? Where are all your stuff? So just go through and upload everything, unless they specifically tell you, okay, we only need things uploaded to the primary tech's ticket. In some situations, you're going to have your helper tech maybe only be there for 2 hours when you're there for 6 hours. So you do want to keep track of each other's hours separately and report them separately. You want to be honest. You don't want to say that you were both there for 6 hours when one was there for 2 and one was there for 6. Now, I'm assuming you're successful and you have back-to-back jobs, so you have your next site to get to. So once you've been released from the first site, then you want to proceed on to the next job. Now, if the job that you're currently on is running over schedule and you're going to end up being late to the second job, then you want to do certain things before that second job's time frame. You want to make sure that you notify the client of the second job that you're going to be late before the time frame starts, because if you wait until the time frame passes, you're going to be a no-call, no-show, and that can get you, number one, in bad relationship with the client, but number two, sometimes these platforms will suspend you, and that will kill your ability to do other jobs. So it's critical that you call the client for that second job before you're late and say, hey, I'm stuck on this previous job. It was supposed to be 4 hours, but we ran into these delays and yada yada. I'm not quite done. And the toughest part is a lot of them are going to say, well, when are you going to be the next site? And you may not know. I mean, that's the hard part. You may be in a situation where you're waiting on tech support to troubleshoot or to finish something, and you really don't know. You just have to be honest with your client and say, hey, I would love to give you a specific time, but unfortunately, I'm waiting on tech support to finish reconfiguring something, and they haven't given me a time frame. But I can assure you, as soon as I'm done here, I will go to your site. And you can sometimes even let them know, hey, if you need to reassign the job, I understand. I'm just letting you know that I'm not going to be there on time. Most clients are going to be understanding. I mean, they're not going to be happy that you're late, but most of the time, if you call them ahead of time or you're late, then they will be more understanding and they'll work with you. They're always going to push you to be like, well, what time are you going to be there? And that's the hardest question to answer politely. Sometimes it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I know that I will go to your job like as soon as I'm done here, but I don't know at this moment. So you just got to handle that delicately. The thing that drives me nuts though is when a tech, especially my employees, when I've got, a couple of techs, if I know that guy was going to be held up and delayed and couldn't get to the next one, if I knew about it, then maybe I could go out and cover the call, or maybe I could get one of my other techs to cover the job. But when you get silence and no information about it, that's when it's really problematic. So find a way to communicate with your next client or your boss if you're in my situation. I mean, even if you're on the phone with tech support, or on a bridge call, there's some way to communicate. You can put a tech support call on hold. You can use another phone. You can borrow a phone. You can text. You can send messages in the client apps or the websites. You can send emails to the ones that are email based. Heck, you can send smoke signals. So there's no excuse to not contact your other client and let them know that you're going to be late. I'm telling you, it's a big deal. Like, there's been some times when it's cost me the entire client relationship, being late one time, not showing up and not calling them, and they will never call you again. And that's not good when you're trying to build a repertoire, a foundational group of clients to work with you. Let's say everything went well and you got done early at your first job. Most of the time, you can go to your second site early. The only time that won't work is if they have like a planned bridge call, or your tech support guy is like scheduled out throughout the day and he's only got that 2-hour block because he's working with somebody previously. But most of the time, they're not going to care if you go early. You just want to, again, guess what I'm going to say? Call the client, ask them. And most of the time, they'll be like, oh, yeah, go ahead and go out and you can do the job early. Let's just talk about some generic service call tips that I put in here because these are things that I found that techs need to know. Don't leave your tools and materials on site for a multi-day job. Even if you think you're going to return the next day, I mean, you're certain you're going to return, don't do it. Several problems. So you want to treat every visit like it is the last time you'll be on site, because sometimes that return trip will be canceled. You think you're going to go back out the next day, and overnight the tech support guys resolve the issue remotely. They don't need you to go back, and you've got all your stuff sitting there in that building, and you got to go grab it before you go pick up another ticket. The other thing that happens is tools have this amazing way of growing legs, and they just walk away. So when you leave things, sometimes you go back and they're not all there the next day. Take everything home with you at the end of the day. Let's talk about return parts. So when you go out and you install something and you're replacing a piece of equipment, most of the time that part needs to be returned, the bad part, the old part. And there's a lot of clients that will tell you to leave the parts on site. But what I've found is the most efficient and safest way to handle this is to take the parts yourself and ship them back yourself. Because even if the client tells you to leave the parts on site for the manager to return, you're going to find that sometimes the manager, it's not a priority to them. They don't care. So it might be days or weeks before that part ever gets shipped out because, they may not have a daily UPS or FedEx pickup. The problem with that is there's a lot of clients that won't pay you until that tracking number starts tracking. So if that manager sits on those parts for days or weeks, then that's days or weeks before your call is going to be approved for payment. The other thing too is a lot of times, you'll leave a box for them to return, and a few days or weeks later, they can't find it. It never got shipped. And there's some clients that will charge you for the parts, or they'll attempt to. So if you can, box it up, stick the label on it, take it with you, and go drop it off at FedEx or UPS or USPS, whatever it is. Do it yourself, because you can do it faster and it was done. You can take a picture, you get a return receipt, and it just makes your life easier. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to that. If there's something that's massive that's not going to fit in your vehicle, or it's just insanely heavy, you don't want to deal with that. Or if there's 20 boxes, but I would just say overall, handle it yourself. Even if you're leaving it on site, no matter what you're doing, you want to pack it up securely, you want to tape the box, and you want to put the label on the box for the manager. You want to make it ready to be picked up. The other thing you want to do is, even though you might take a picture of the shipping label and you have the tracking number, you want to get a drop-off receipt. That protects you in case that tracking number never tracks. You've got proof that, hey, I left it at that UPS store. I have proof from them that I left it there. I always take a picture of the drop-off receipt, and I always take a picture of the actual return label. And this is important because there's been times to where I took a picture of a label and I put a label on it, and come to find out there was a second label in the box. They had alternate labels. So there would be one label if it was going to the recycling company in certain situations, and there would be another label if they were choosing to send it in for repair. And you were supposed to talk to them and figure out which label to use. There's been times we've put the wrong label on it. Well, by having a picture of it, they're like, hey, we never got the part. Well, it's because the wrong label was on it, but at least by having that, we knew, it shows it was shipping to this address. Here's the tracking number. They can find it. One last thing that I would do is take a photo of the contents of the box before you seal it up. That way they see, number one, all the items are there. And then second of all, they can see that it was packed, so they don't come back at you saying, well, you just threw these, this $5,000 router in a box with no padding and it got destroyed in shipping. Again, it's about protecting yourselves. So if you're still with me after all of this, I know this was a long one, and I appreciate it if you hung with me. I actually have this entire guide available on my website. It's $10. It's just enough to make up for my time of putting it together. It'll be in a Word format, so you can just go in and edit it and customize it for your company's needs or your needs. I'll put a link to that download in the description of the video. And if you hung out through all of this long video, I appreciate it. And I hope it helps you to just kind of learn some general principles of best practices, how to get these jobs done efficiently, how to maximize your time, how to maximize your billable time, and get these jobs approved quickly. Because, doing the jobs is one thing, getting paid for them is a whole different story. If you got value today, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, let's get you out in the field making money. I'll see you in the next video.